Barry Sanders, a name that still sends shivers down the spines of defenders, decades after he last set foot on an NFL field. In 1999, at just 31 years old, Barry shocked the world by retiring with 15,269 rushing yards, just 1,457 yards, shy of breaking Walter Payton's all-time record. What made him so different? Was it his uncanny ability to break ankles with a single cut, leaving defenders grasping at thin air? Or was it his relentless pursuit of greatness, rewriting record books as effortlessly as he juked through defenders? Perhaps it was something deeper. Barry Sanders wasn't just a running back. He was a phenomenon. In a league dominated by size, power, and ego, Barry broke the mold, proving that elusiveness, humility, and pure joy for the game could captivate millions. From a high school backup to a Heisman Trophy winner and NFL legend, Barry Sanders defied the odds. But his greatest challenge wasn't on the field. It was walking away from the game he loved. No press conference, no farewell tour, just a fax to his hometown newspaper. What could drive the most electrifying player in football to leave it all behind? Just 1,457 yards from immortality. In the heart of Wichita, Kansas, Barry Sanders' story began in a modest home shared by 11 children. The Sanders family was more than just large. It was a unit bound by resilience and hard work. Barry's father, William, worked as a roofer and carpenter, while his mother, Shirley, balanced the demands of being a registered nurse with raising their family. In their household, there was no room for excuses. Work meant survival, and survival was a team effort. Even as a child, Barry and his siblings pitched in wherever they could, assisting their father on roofing jobs during sweltering Kansas summers. It was there, hammer in hand under a relentless sun, that Barry learned value of perseverance. Despite the challenges, Barry's childhood wasn't without joy. When he wasn't helping his family, he was on the basketball court or the football field, often pretending to be one of the greats he idolized. Although basketball was his first love, his father, William, had other plans. "You'll get a scholarship playing football," he would say. To Barry, these words weren't just encouragement, they were a directive. His father saw something special in him, even when others didn't. Barry's path to stardom, however, was far from smooth. At Wichita North High School, his own coach doubted him. Standing at 5 feet 8 inches and weighing just over 170 pounds, Barry didn't fit the traditional mold of a running back. To the coaching staff, he was too small and too hesitant to take hits. He spent most of his junior year on the bench, watching others take the spotlight. For many teenagers, the sting of being overlooked might have been enough to quit, but not for Barry. While others saw an undersized kid, Barry saw an opportunity. Everything changed in his senior year. When the starting running back was suspended, Barry got his chance. He exploded onto the field, rushing for over 270 yards and scoring 4 touchdowns in his debut. His shifty moves and incredible acceleration left defenders stumbling in his wake. Game after game, Barry dominated, tallying over 1,000 yards in just 5 games. It wasn't just his stats that stood out, it was his style. His cuts were almost unnatural, as if he saw the game in slow motion while everyone else scrambled to keep up. For the first time, Barry wasn't just another player, he was the player. By season's end, Barry had earned all-state honors and was named an honorable mention All-American. Yet, despite his jaw-dropping numbers and accolades, college recruiters still hesitated. Too small, they said. Not built for the next level. Barry received only a handful of offers from smaller programs like Tulsa and Iowa State. Once again, doubts surrounded him, but Barry remained unfazed. He chose Oklahoma State, determined to make his mark. He carried not only his dreams, but also his father's unrelenting belief in him. What Barry didn't know then was that his journey was far from over. The challenges he faced as a teenager were just the beginning. Every doubter, every rejection, and every sleepless night spent wondering if he'd ever get his chance, all of it was preparing him for the greatest season college football had ever seen. But how did Barry transform from a backup to the greatest college running back of all time? The answer was waiting on the horizon. Oklahoma State University wasn't Barry's first choice, but it became the perfect stage for his meteoric rise. Upon arriving in Stillwater, Barry found himself behind Thurman Thomas, one of the nation's top running backs and a future Hall of Famer. For 2 seasons, Barry waited in the shadows, watching and learning. Even in limited action, he began to show flashes of brilliance, especially on special teams, where his breathtaking kick returns often left crowds gasping. The patience and discipline he had developed from years of being overlooked were finally paying off. Opportunity wasn't just knocking, it was pounding on the door. When Thomas graduated and moved to the NFL, the reins of the Oklahoma State offense were handed to Barry. It didn't take long for him to turn the football world upside down. The 1988 season wasn't just a breakout year. It was an explosion that rewrote what many believed was possible in college football. Over 11 games, Barry rushed for 2,628 yards and scored 37 touchdowns, numbers that seemed more like video game stats than real life. On average, he racked up more than 200 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns per game. His opponents, helpless. The brilliance wasn't just in the numbers. Every game felt like a masterpiece, with moments that seemed to defy physics. He could vanish into a crowd of defenders and emerge on the other side, sprinting down the field untouched. Defenders weren't just beaten, they were humiliated. For 1 season, Barry didn't just play football, he transcended it. Reporters, fans, and analysts ran out of adjectives to describe his performances. It wasn't a matter of if he'd win the Heisman Trophy, but by how wide a margin. Even the Heisman ceremony itself captured Barry's quiet nature. Instead of attending in person, he watched the announcement via satellite from Tokyo, where Oklahoma State was preparing for a game. When his name was called, his reaction was understated, almost detached. The trophy, he believed, wasn't just his, it belonged to his teammates, his offensive line, and the people who had helped him along the way. It was a reflection of his core values: humility, gratitude, and a relentless focus on the game itself. The 1988 season wasn't just historic, it was transformational. Barry had gone from an unknown backup to a household name. Scouts from every NFL team had taken notice, and the buzz around the 1989 NFL Draft centered on one question: could this small, elusive running back succeed against professional defenders? For Barry, those doubts weren't new. He'd been answering them his entire life. This time, the stakes were just higher. Looking back, it's almost impossible to overstate the significance of that season. No running back before or since has replicated its magic. The records he set remain untouchable, a testament to both his talent and his determination. The moments Barry created that year were unforgettable, the kind that fans relive in highlight reels and conversations decades later. It wasn't just a season, it was the prelude to greatness. When the Detroit Lions selected Barry Sanders with the 3rd overall pick in the 1989 NFL Draft, expectations were sky high. This wasn't just about drafting a player, it was about reviving a franchise that had spent years in mediocrity. From the moment he stepped onto the field, it became clear that Barry wasn't just another rookie. His rookie season felt like a whirlwind, as he tore through defenses with an ease that almost seemed unfair. His ability to stop on a dime and accelerate to full speed left defenders sprawled on the turf, grasping at air. Despite his undeniable talent, there was one thing he lacked: a dominant supporting cast. The Lions' offensive line wasn't the kind of well-oiled machine built to pave wide-open lanes. Instead, Barry often faced stacked defenses determined to stop him at all costs. And yet, time after time, he turned broken plays into breathtaking runs. By the end of the season, he had rushed for 1,470 yards and scored 14 touchdowns. He missed the league's rushing title by just 11 yards, but only because he turned down a chance to pad his stats late in the final game. For Barry, team success always came first. Year after year, his performances pushed the boundaries of what seemed possible. Even as the Lions struggled to build a consistent contender around him, Barry continued to amaze. Each game brought new highlights, new debates, and a growing chorus of fans proclaiming him as the most exciting player in the league. His ability to juke defenders wasn't just skill, it felt like art. He didn't run through defenses. He danced through them, each step a carefully orchestrated move. And as he danced, the Lions began to hope. One of his most unforgettable seasons came in 1997, when everything aligned for a campaign that felt almost mythic. Over 16 games, Barry rushed for 2,053 yards, becoming just the third player in NFL history to surpass the 2,000-yard mark. Even more impressive, he achieved this feat after starting the season with 2 subpar games, a stretch where he totaled just 53 rushing yards. What followed was nothing short of miraculous. 14 consecutive games with over 100 rushing yards. It wasn't just consistency, it was dominance. He earned the league's Most Valuable Player award that year, a rare honor for a running back in an era dominated by quarterbacks. For all his brilliance, Barry's relationship with the Lions was complicated. He brought hope to a franchise that had long been devoid of it, yet the team's struggles persisted. In his 10-year career, Detroit reached the playoffs 5 times, but postseason success remained elusive. His signature playoff moment, a jaw-dropping 85-yard touchdown run against the Dallas Cowboys in 1991, showed what could have been. But it was also bittersweet. The Lions never built a roster capable of complementing his greatness, and their inability to compete at the highest level began to weigh on him. It was a heavy burden to carry. No matter how many defenders he left in the dust or how many records he shattered, Barry's ultimate dream of winning a Super Bowl remained out of reach. Still, he never complained. He didn't demand trades, criticize coaches, or call out teammates. His focus remained on the field, where his performances spoke louder than words ever could. But beneath the calm exterior, a storm was brewing. Few moments in NFL history have been as shocking as what unfolded on July 27, 1999. Just days before the Detroit Lions were set to begin training camp, news broke that Barry Sanders had sent a fax to his hometown newspaper, the Wichita Eagle. In it, he announced his retirement from professional football. For the fans, the team, and the league, it was an earthquake. The NFL's most electrifying player still in his prime was walking away. At 31 years old, with 15,269 rushing yards under his belt, Barry was less than 1,500 yards shy of Walter Payton's all-time rushing record. The football world was stunned. The retirement wasn't just unexpected, it was confusing. Barry had just rushed for 1,491 yards the previous season, showing no signs of slowing down. Physically, he was as capable as ever, and his iconic playing style still made him one of the most feared opponents in the league. Yet, in his letter, Barry wrote simply that his desire to exit the game was greater than his desire to stay. Those words, while heartfelt, raised more questions than answers. Why now? Why so suddenly? Fans and analysts alike were left grasping for explanations. Behind the scenes, the reasons for Barry's decision were far more complex. He had spent 10 years carrying not just the football, but the hopes of an entire franchise. Week after week, he faced 8-man defensive fronts, knowing that stopping him was every team's sole focus. While Barry's greatness often turned impossible situations into highlights, the weight of being Detroit's lone beacon of hope began to take its toll. The Lions had reached the playoffs 5 times during his career, but they had managed just a single postseason victory. For all his individual brilliance, team success felt like an unfulfilled dream. Adding to his frustration was the organizational dysfunction that seemed to define the Lions. Decisions made by the front office often baffled both fans and players. Key teammates were let go, coaching changes felt aimless, and there was little indication that the franchise had a cohesive plan to compete for a Super Bowl. Barry was loyal, perhaps to a fault, but even he began to question whether his sacrifices were worth it. His love for the game, which had carried him through countless challenges, started to waver under the weight of disappointment. In the months following his retirement, Barry remained out of the public eye, declining interviews and avoiding the spotlight. This wasn't a publicity stunt or an attempt to make a statement. It was a man reclaiming his life. The NFL world may have been in uproar, but Barry found solace in the simplicity of stepping away. He spent time with his family, traveled, and returned to the quiet life he had always cherished. For Barry, football was never about fame or records. It was about joy, and when that joy began to fade, so did his reason to continue. Even now, his decision remains a subject of debate. Did Barry walk away too soon? Could he have surpassed Walter Payton's record and solidified his place as the greatest running back of all time? Or was his choice to leave a statement in itself? A reminder that greatness isn't defined solely by numbers. These questions linger, but one thing is certain. Barry Sanders left on his own terms. A rare and admirable feat in a world that often demands more than it gives. Long after the dust settled on his retirement, the impact of Barry Sanders continues to ripple through the NFL and beyond. To many, he wasn't just a player. He was a symbol of grace, humility, and unparalleled skill. His playing style redefined what it meant to be a running back. Where others relied on brute force, Barry relied on finesse. His movements seemed almost otherworldly, a combination of instinct, vision, and technique that no one could replicate. In a league built on physicality, he turned football into an art form, but his legacy goes far deeper than highlight reels and record books. Barry's humility stood in stark contrast to the swagger that often defines professional sports. He wasn't the type to spike the ball after a touchdown or taunt his opponents. Instead, he would hand the ball to the referee, quietly jog to the sideline, and prepare for the next play. It wasn't about showing off, it was about the joy of the game itself. That humility inspired countless players who came after him, proving that you could be great without needing to shout it from the rooftops. Off the field, Barry became a beacon of consistency in a world that often values flash over substance. He never sought the limelight, never indulged in off-field controversies, and never let the fame change who he was. Even after signing one of the most lucrative contracts in NFL history, he remained the same quiet, grounded individual. While some athletes chased endorsements and headlines, Barry chose to focus on what truly mattered to him: family, community, and personal peace. For Detroit, his impact went beyond football. In a city that often struggled with economic hardship and sports heartbreak, Barry was a source of pride and hope. Fans packed the Silverdome, not just to watch the Lions, but to witness Barry perform magic on the field. Every carry felt like an event, every game an opportunity to see something extraordinary. When he retired, it wasn't just a blow to the team, it was a loss for a city that had rallied around him. Yet, even in retirement, Barry remained a part of Detroit's fabric, a beloved figure whose influence extended far beyond the gridiron. His 10-year career may seem short compared to others, but the numbers he put up in that time are staggering. Over 15,000 rushing yards, 100 touchdowns, and countless broken ankles later. Barry's impact is undeniable, yet his greatness is about more than numbers. It's about the moments, the runs that left defenders sprawled on the ground, the games that kept fans on the edge of their seats, and the legacy of a man who stayed true to himself every step of the way. But perhaps the most enduring part of his legacy is the question he left us with. What if? What if he had played 3 more seasons? What if the Lions had built a championship caliber team around him? What if the NFL had seen the full extent of his potential? These questions linger, haunting and inspiring in equal measure. There's a beauty in the way some stories end not with a roar, but with a quiet resolve. For all the noise Barry Sanders created on the field, his departure was marked by silence. No farewell tour, no grand announcement, just a man at peace with his decision, walking away on his own terms. It was a choice that baffled many and left others in awe. In a world that often demands more, Barry taught us the power of enough. The legacy he left behind wasn't just in his stats or his highlight reels. It was in the emotions he stirred. Fans tuned in every Sunday, not knowing what they would see, but knowing it would be special. There was an anticipation, a magic, that few players in NFL history have ever inspired. Barry didn't just play football. He made people fall in love with it. His runs weren't just yards gained. They were moments of pure joy, moments that made us believe in the impossible. And yet, for all the awe he inspired, Barry never let the game define him. His humility reminds us that greatness isn't about standing above others. but lifting them up. It's about showing what's possible, not just on the field, but in life. That's why his story still resonates. It's not just a football story, it's a human story. If this story has touched you, take a moment to support this channel. Hit the like button and subscribe if you've enjoyed this journey. It's a simple way to keep these stories alive and ensure they reach others who cherish the magic of football. Barry's career, like his runs, ended with elegance and grace. There were no grand declarations of what could have been, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing he gave everything he had. And while we'll never know how many more records he could have broken, or how many more defenders he could have left in the dust, maybe that's the point. Barry's story isn't about what was left undone, it's about what was. So as we close this chapter, remember the lessons he left behind. To play with heart, to stay true to who you are, and to know when to walk away. Barry Sanders didn't just break ankles, he broke expectations, proving that the truest measure of greatness isn't found in accolades, but in the way a legacy lingers, long after the final whistle. What do you think? Did Barry leave too soon, or was his timing as perfect as his cuts? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to join us for more unforgettable stories like this one.